So yeah. So I guess we can start with PTSD. So in my senior year of high school, I was very, very sick. From the beginning of my senior year to the end of my senior year. And it started with me having colds, and I have an autoimmune disorder. I have epilepsy, and it's I believe it caused my autoimmune disorder. It sounds horrible. I don't know exactly where my autoimmune disorder came from. I have an autoimmune disorder though. It's either from my epilepsy or my rheumatoid arthritis. At this point, I have so many medical things happening that I don't really know where it all comes from, but I do know for a fact I do have an autoimmune disorder. And so we just all assumed that I was constantly getting sick because of my autoimmune disorder. And that wasn't the case. What was really happening was I had switched my epilepsy medications that year because I was taking a medication that made me feel a little bit slower, made me feel like I wasn't picking up fast enough in class and wasn't able to focus, and that I was slurring my words. So when I switched my medication, I was having an acute allergic reaction to it, and that acute allergic reaction was Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and it came on really slow. It started with me getting sick and losing a lot of weight. And the losing weight part was also kind of coupled with a slight eating disorder on my behalf that I will hold myself accountable for, that I did have, which is a story for another day that we will save. But I definitely was losing weight a whole lot faster with my Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and I was getting lumps on my neck, just all sorts of crazy things. And then one night, my lips started to blister, and I woke up the next morning not able to breathe. So we called the ambulance show up, and they're like, oh, she's just having an allergic reaction, she's gonna be fine. And then they send me home from the hospital with like a Benadryl shot. And then a couple hours later, I can't breathe again. So we call the ambulance again, and then they're like, she's just having like a little panic attack. She'll be fine. And they leave. And a couple hours later, I still can't breathe. And so I go to another hospital, and they admit me, and they can't seem to figure out what's going on with me, but they just pump me full of all sorts of meds, from freaking Oxy to Dilaudid to I've been on everything. So they gave me every single medication that they could give me to just help with the pain, because at that point my lips were blistered. My lips were blistered. They were raw. The inside of my mouth was raw. My skin had painful, I don't know how to describe it, I guess you could call them hives, and bumps on them. And at this point, my eyes were swollen to the point I couldn't get my contacts in. I had to wear my glasses, and I was starting to create a film. My body was starting to create a film over my eyes. So I was slowly, over the course of this time, going blind. Sorry, this is a lot to talk about because I don't think I talk about it a lot. And just pre-warning now, if you have a difficulty watching or seeing things with not so pretty pictures, gory pictures, or needles, you may want to check out now. But yeah, so my lips blistered, I started to go blind, and they could not figure out what was wrong with me. And I was really sick for a little bit, and I was in the hospital for a little bit. And after that, I thought I was okay, because I think that when things happen, and in that time frame when things are happening, you think you're okay, but you're really not. You're just kind of going through the motions. And I think the aftermath of being in the hospital and coming home and seeing my lips blistered and scabbed, and not being able to leave my house for probably 2 weeks or so. Not even 2 weeks, probably it was like a month. And not being able to see for a little bit was very difficult for me. My PTSD lies within getting sick now. And I was diagnosed when I kept going into the doctor's office by my doctor. I get very nervous over little colds. So if I have a little cough, I think I'm having an asthma attack. If I, like, if I were to get like a pimple, I think that I'm, like breaking out in some kind of crazy disease. And kind of like, like if you go on WebMD or whatever it is and you look up the symptoms, I create the symptoms in my head because I got such like a rare and random disease that I create these symptoms in my head and freak myself out, which I don't mean to do, but it just kind of happens. And sometimes I can check myself, but other times I'm like, well, fuck, like everything in the world has already happened to me, so why wouldn't it be this thing too, And I also have a very large fear of ambulance, which is weird, I guess, but when I hear an ambulance, my heart rate goes up a little bit. It makes me nervous just because I've been in one, and it just reminds me of that day. So that's where my PTSD comes from.